بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وعظيمنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه الغر الميامين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي علي بن أبي طالب. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. أما بعد, it is attributed to Yazid that he said, "May Allah curse Ibn Marjana, for he attacked Al-Hussein and forced him to fight. When he was ready to leave or come to me or go to the borders and defend and guard the borders of the Muslims until his soul was taken in death. But when he did not allow this and he refused this for this to happen, and he ended up killing him, then the hate of the people, both the righteous and the evildoer, came towards me, and enmity was instilled in their hearts against me for the serious killing of Al-Hussein alayhi salam. I wish I had never had anything to do with Ibn Marjana. May God curse him, and may God be angry with him." The first of our loud salawat in honor of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. A second even louder salawat in honor of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. A third with your loudest voices in honor of the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asri wa zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. MashaAllah. Respected scholars, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Did Yazid regret what took place in Karbala? Was he remorseful or even repentant over the actions of what took place on the 10th of Muharram? This is a question that is being asked not only in non-Shi'i circles, but also in Shi'i circles. That you see that in certain pieces of Islamic literature, Yazid admits that he is remorseful about the actions that took place in Karbala. This particular passage that I quoted is an example of Yazid seemingly remorseful, and mentioned in some of the most famous books in the history of the religion of Islam. When a person, for example, reads Al-Bidayah wa Nihaya, or a person reads Siyar al-A'lam al-Nubala, or a person reads, for example, Tarikh al-Tabari, then there is a certain section or a certain aspect of when Yazid meets the captives of the 10th of Muharram in Sham, that there is a back and forth that takes place between him and Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam, him and Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. And that in that back and forth, we see a passage like this showing a regretful Yazid. A Yazid who is angry with the actions which he lays blame on Ibn Marjana. Because of this, you found that in the spectrum of the opinions on Yazid within the schools of Islam, you go to one extreme, and that is, for example, the Shia 12ers who do la'na on Yazid. And then you go to a middle ground of Shia who may not like Yazid or despise him, but prefer not to do la'na. And then you go to a ground of Ahlul Sunnah who revile Yazid. And then you go to a ground of Ahlul Sunnah who say that we neither love him nor we revile him. And then you may find some of Ahlul Sunnah who come to a conclusion that ultimately Yazid was not at Karbala. Because he was not at Karbala, he could not be wholeheartedly blamed. That's on the one level, which we dissected in last year's Arbaeen Majalis. But on the other level, there is a movement that has existed since after Karbala until today that says that there are those who love Yazid because they say the man himself was regretful. At the end of the day, the bibis and the granddaughters of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alih came back from Sham to Medina. If Yazid was so bad, then Yazid would have killed them. At the end of the day, Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam, Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, a lot of them who were there present in Sham were very open in their language against Yazid. In some cases, their language was very harsh, was very strong. If Yazid was as tyrannical as the Shia say he is, then Yazid could have easily at that moment said, kill this person right now. Don't let this person live. But Yazid does not do this. Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam and Imam Zain al-Abidin, on a night like tomorrow night, we are of the belief that they return back to Karbala and then eventually from Karbala return back to Medina. If Yazid was so evil, then how could Yazid let them go? Yazid could have easily made sure that that period imprisonment was a very short period, and he could have made sure then after that he could have kept them even longer and longer to torture them and make them have the worst of lives. Further than that, some people said that if Allah's door of Tawbah is always open, therefore in that door of Tawbah where it's always open, why would Allah not open the door of Tawbah for someone like Yazid? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا. Say to my servants who have been extravagant against themselves, never be despondent of the mercy of Allah, for Allah forgives all sins. If the Quran says Allah forgives all sins, we all believe that there is only one sin that if you die on it on the day of judgment, you cannot be forgiven, and that is shirk. If other sins are committed, killing people, harassing people, torturing people, lying against people, and so on and so forth, so then why would Yazid not be open to these as well? Especially if the man himself makes an effort for these. At the end of the day, I cannot apply a scale on some and I move on with a scale on others. I cannot tell the whole community that Allah's door of Tawbah is on all of you except Yazid. At the end of the day, if God says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا, then sometimes it takes one moment for a person who's blocking water from the children of Ahlul Bayt like Hur to begin to become a person under the mercy of Allah. As in Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi blocks the water from the children of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family. And yet Hur is forgiven in a moment when he turns his heart towards the family of the Prophet. So if Hur can be forgiven, and we always say that everybody can be forgiven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so why could Yazid not be forgiven? If Yazid turned around, say with a salah, say Yazid turned around with a dua, say Yazid turned around and said that, look, I'm going to send you back to Medina in a state of peace, in a state of security. Is that not enough for Allah to forgive? Does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not say, we love those who are repentant? Allah loves His creation. Allah is merciful with His creation. Allah leaves the door of Tawbah open to all His creation. Therefore, when you add all of these, what conclusion was reached? The conclusion was reached by some non-Shia that Yazid can neither be loved nor can he be reviled. On the basis of what? On the basis of passages like this. How do we reply? Because for us as Shia, we obviously are of those who completely revile Yazid. But if I see a hadith where Yazid attacks Ibn Marjana. Ibn Marjana, as you all know, is Ibn Ziyad. If Yazid attacks Ibn Ziyad, then maybe the blame should be on Ibn Ziyad, not on Yazid. Because at the end of the day, Ibn Ziyad had more of a role in Karbala than Yazid, according to most. Ibn Ziyad, firstly, was the one who made sure that Umar bin Sa'ad was being watched closely by Shimr bin al-Jawshan. Ibn Ziyad was the one who was involved in all the preparations. Although Ibn Ziyad and Yazid were both not at Karbala, one may argue that maybe Ibn Ziyad is more to blame. Let us tonight examine this key area in depth as to whether Yazid was truly, according to the sources, regretful. Was the door of Tawbah open for him through a salah like Salat al-Ghufayla or not? Was Yazid someone who the armies that he had taken part in meant that he was forgiven by Allah or not? Did Yazid himself look for forgiveness or not? And how do his actions and the words of Sayyidah Zainab and the words of Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhim as-salam and his actions after Sham indicate that the man was never close to Tawbah whatsoever? Let's examine this and dissect the topic in complete depth. Let's look at that passage again. The passage says that Yazid said, "May God curse Ibn Marjana." Interesting line. May God curse Ibn Marjana. Why? Because he attacked Imam al-Hussein. And he forced Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam to fight. And that Imam al-Hussein was ready to leave Karbala or come to me, Yazid says, or ready to go to the borders of the Muslims and protect them. But because of Ibn Ziyad did not give him these options, and therefore Ibn Ziyad is responsible for the killing of Imam al-Hussein and responsible for the enmity in the hearts of the people towards me. How do I look at that passage? First and foremost, Yazid, you are the one who appointed Ibn Ziyad in Kufa. Yes? You find that when I look at this passage, I remember that Yazid was in trouble months before Karbala. Why? When Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was ready to stand up against Yazid, Yazid himself found himself in trouble that there were people who were ready to support Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Yazid asked Sir John the Roman, who was his advisor and the advisor of his father Muawiyah. He said to him, "What would my father do if he was alive today?" Sir John the Roman Christian, mashallah, the Roman Christians become the advisor of the Muslim Khalifa of Allah on earth. Sir John the Roman Christian said to Yazid, if your father was alive, then he would put Ibn Ziyad in power in Kufa. Yazid and Ibn Ziyad were similar rank, similar position, similar lineage to one another. So Yazid decided that he'll put Ibn Ziyad in Kufa. Therefore, when Yazid says, "May God curse Ibn Marjana," first and foremost, you are the one who appointed Ibn Marjana. Ibn Marjana would never have come to Kufa were it not for your appointment. You are the one who made sure he got to Kufa. Number two, not only did you tell him to be in Kufa, you also asked him to massacre anyone who was a supporter of Hussein bin Ali. If you look at Ibn Marjana's decisions in Kufa, they were all decisions that were based on who? That were based on the rulings and the guidelines of Yazid. Killing Muslim bin Aqil, killing Hani bin Urwa. Not just them. These are the names that everyone always mentions. As if there were only 2 or 3 Shia in Kufa who died. Nearly 3,000-4,000, maybe even up to 10,000 Shia of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam in Kufa were killed by Ibn Ziyad. Ibn Ziyad would never be the one who is responsible unless Yazid gives him an order. Either Ibn Ziyad could say no to the order, or Ibn Ziyad can say yes. Therefore, Ibn Ziyad, when you curse him, because he's the one you say killed Hussein, Ibn Ziyad is the one who firstly killed the people of Kufa. Secondly, Ibn Ziyad, on your orders, was the one who said that make sure Hussein is blocked from coming to Kufa unless Hussein pledges allegiance to me. I ask you all a question. Originally, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, why did he even head towards Kufa? Why did he head even to Mecca? For what reason? Because Yazid ultimately, before Ibn Ziyad was in the picture, Yazid was the one who had said that behead Hussein in Medina. Therefore, those who said that Yazid was not guilty for what took place at Karbala, Yazid was the one who had ordered that Imam is killed in Medina. Then ordered that Imam is killed where? In Mecca, by the Kaaba. Then ordered that Ibn Marjana forces Imam al-Hussein, irrespective of whether Imam has women with him, whether he has children with him, that Imam al-Hussein is to be blocked from coming towards Kufa. These were all orders from the central headquarters where? In Sham. Say, for example, in this country, Saddam Hussein, when he was alive in this country, someone could say he's not to blame for everyone who's died in Iraq. At the end of the day, he appoints governors, he appoints generals, and those generals undertake whatever the appointment is from the head authority. Therefore, when Ibn Marjana blocks Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam from coming to Kufa, that is a guideline that has come from where? That is a guideline that has come all the way from Sham. Yazid continues in this particular passage. What does he say? He says that Hussein was ready to leave Karbala. Yes, it's true, he was ready to leave Karbala. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, as I discussed in my Muharram Majalis, up until the morning of Ashura, was ready to leave Karbala and go home. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was not a bloodthirsty individual who looked for war and killing. Up until 9 a.m. on the 10th of Muharram, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was ready to go back. Allow me to go, as Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas in one of the Maqatil says, let my master go to Rome, or let him go to India. And you can keep Hijaz, and you can keep the land of Iraq. Imam al-Hussein, yes, he was ready to leave, to go back, but he was forced by Umar bin Sa'ad, by Shimr bin Joshan, from the orders of Ibn Marjana, which had come from Yazid, that Hussein bin Ali can neither leave one way or leave the other, unless what happens? Unless he pledges allegiance to Yazid. And that's why you find that that blame on Ibn Ziyad, all of it ultimately comes back to the man who appointed Ibn Ziyad to carry out all of this. Yazid then goes on to say what? He says, people hate me because of Ibn Ziyad. La wallah, we don't hate you because of Ibn Ziyad. We hate you and Ibn Ziyad. We don't hate you. We don't hate you because of Ibn Ziyad. In that passage, which is narrated in, as I said, Siyar al-A'lam, or in al-Bidayah, or in Tabari, Yazid says, because of Ibn Ziyad, the people now hate me. The people don't hate you because of Ibn Ziyad. Rather, the people hate you for a number of other reasons I will come to shortly. So therefore, the first opinion that they gave was that Yazid himself said, it's not me, it's Ibn Ziyad. I have no issue with the Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. I like Imam al-Hussein. That was the first argument they gave. We break that argument down. Second argument for Yazid regretting Karbala and doing Tawbah was that they said Yazid asked Imam Zain al-Abidin, how can I be forgiven for what happened at Karbala? How many times have you heard this in Majalis? That Yazid asks Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, he says to him, how can I be forgiven for what I have done to all of you? Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam supposedly replies to Yazid by saying, pray Salat al-Ghufaylah for whatever number of days in a row. Let's say for 40 days in a row, and Allah will forgive you for killing Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. What's Salat al-Ghufaylah? You all know Salat al-Ghufaylah. Salat al-Ghufaylah is that salah which a person normally prays between Maghrib and Isha. Of course, you can pray it after Isha as well, but mainly you pray it between Maghrib and Isha. The rewards for it. Jannah, you are the inheritor of Jannah if you pray Salat al-Ghufayla. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instantly answers all of your desires. So they say that Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam is the one who told Yazid, pray this prayer for 40 days in a row. Allah will forgive you for killing Imam al-Hussein. Wallah, I wish forgiveness was that easy, in all honesty. That a person just needs to pray 40 prayers. It's like that salah. People come to me, they say there's this one salah, if you pray it, 100 years of qada is wiped out. That's a wonderful salah. It sounds great, but it's an absolute fakie if ever there was one. Yes? There's no such thing as a salah which is a pass for my qada prayers to all be deleted. Qada is qada. I have to try and make up as many of those qadas as possible. And then if I die, I might write in my will, Salat al-Istijara, someone comes and makes up the rest for me. Yazid, no way. This is absolute nonsense, this Ghufayla story. It's absolutely ridiculous. Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, knows that this person will never pray these prayers. If he's ever prayed prayers, that's another story. Number two, no such thing as Imam Zain al-Abidin offering him, because Yazid saying, look, I'm really sorry. I made a big mistake. Is there a way out for me? Yazid's too arrogant to look for a way out. And he is someone who Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam would have referred to already when he looked at the army of Yazid and he said to them, Shaitan has overtaken you. And once Shaitan has overtaken you, there is no way back, because the remembrance of Allah has completely overtaken. Contrast to Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi. Hur, Shaitan hadn't overtaken him. How do you prove it? Because Hur bin Yazid al-Riyahi, when it came to leading Salah, him or Imam al-Hussein, what did Hur say? Aba Abdullah, you are the son of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, grandson of Rasulullah. You are the one who leads us in Salah. When Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam said to Hur, Thakalatka ummuk, you all know the lines. May your mom have never given birth to you. Hur replied, if your mother was any other mother, then I would have attacked you. But you're the son of Fatima. Hur, Shaitan had not overtaken him. Whereas with Yazid, Shaitan had overtaken him completely. How do you prove it? With the fact that Yazid had wanted to behead Imam al-Hussein and ordered for his beheading, whether it was in Medina or in Mecca. How much Shaitan has overtaken you that even next to the Kaaba you don't mind seeing blood. The Kaaba, where a grasshopper or mosquito, if it comes on you, you're not meant to kill it. He says, behead the grandson of Rasulullah. Therefore, the Salat al-Ghufayla story, number two, absolute nonsense. Number three, there are those who say that you have to leave him alone. Why? Because he's the son of a Sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. The son of a Sahabi, so what? Say, but you know, he's one of the sons of the Sahaba. And if you're the son of a Sahabi, then we must have not love for him, but we must not revile him. Because you should not revile somebody who's the son of a Sahabi. Firstly, in the Quran, prophets of Allah, may Allah bless them, their sons come out as their enemies. Yes? Those sons who come out as enemies, Qabil became an enemy of Nabi Adam alayhi salam. When Qabil is an enemy, can I say that, look, the door of Tawbah, regret? No, Qabil is himself, Adam is himself alayhi salam. Nabi Yaqub, his sons, they turned out to be enemies of their father. So just because someone is the son of a Sahabi or the son of someone respected, we should not. Even I remember they used to say that if someone is the son of a mushrik, you shouldn't attack his mushrik father. This is one of the arguments. Because they said that the Sahabi son would be sad if you attacked his father, especially Khalid ibn al-Walid. Because Khalid's father, Walid ibn al-Mughira, was a major enemy of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi in his early years, in his life. And so they said that don't attack Walid too much because Khalid's his son. There's a rule for Khalid, but not a rule for Ali. For Khalid, you cannot attack his father too much. But for Ali, it's open game on Abu Talib in some circles. When I come therefore on the third level, they say that, look, Yazid is the son of Muawiyah. And therefore, you shouldn't then have reviled him because you should still have that level of respect. That was the third argument. Fourth argument said that Yazid would have some regret and some tawbah. Why? Because there's a hadith that says whoever participated in the siege of Constantinople, then that person is forgiven by Allah. They said Yazid was seen in the siege of Constantinople, and therefore Yazid is forgiven by Allah automatically. Again, the first siege of Constantinople, Yazid was around 5 years old at that time. I don't think he's going to be there in the battlefield necessarily. But even the siege of Constantinople that came later in Yazid's time, Yazid turned up, saw the battle, he was on the outskirts, he hung around with his Mrs. Kulthum, and he was reading poetry while watching the battle take place. Yazid had nothing to do with any of those sieges, whether literally or metaphorically. Another argument they said is, look, Yazid sent the family of the Prophet back with respect to Medina. And it's true, let's be very real here, that Yazid did send the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he was asked by them, when he said to them, what is it that you want? And Imam Zain al-Abidin replied, what you took from us, you can never give back to us. And then he asked again, and the Imam replied back by saying, allow us to return to Medina via Karbala. What do they say? They said Yazid allowed them to return. Therefore, that is tawbah from Yazid. That is regret from Yazid. Because if Yazid had no tawbah, he would not have allowed them to return. We reply by saying what? We reply by saying, look at the words and the behavior of Yazid leading up to this moment. You'll see that the man had no regret whatsoever for what took place in Karbala. How do we prove it? Number one, his poetry shows he had no regret for what took place in Karbala. What did he say in his poetry? ليت أشياخي ببدر شهدوا جزع الخزرج من وقع الأسد لا هلوا واستهلوا فرحا ثم قالوا يا يزيد لا تشهل لعبت هاشم بالملك فلا خبر جاء ولا وحي نزل. Listen to his poem. Let's see if he has done tawbah or no. Because the idea is that he's very regretful. He's very sad. It's all Ibn Ziyad's fault. If it's all Ibn Ziyad's fault, what does he say in his poem? I wish my ancestors from Badr were here today. Who's Yazid's ancestors from Badr? Let's see how regretful Yazid is. His ancestors from Badr were, of course, who? His grandmother was, of course, Hind. Hind, who's her father? Utbah bin Rabi'ah. Utbah bin Rabi'ah was the head of the army on the day of Badr, killed by Imam Ali alayhi salam. And his uncles were killed by Imam Ali alayhi salam. So when they were all killed by Imam Ali alayhi salam, then what's Yazid saying now? He's saying, I wish those ancestors. Who are they? Kafir mushriks. Who's Utbah bin Rabi'ah? Who's Walid? Who's Shaybah? These are all kafir mushriks who fought the grandson or fought the grandfather of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam on the plains of Badr and Uhud and so on and so forth. When you say layta ashyakhi bi Badrin, what are you saying? I hope you know Badr. You know the way that his father, this one whose head is next to me, the way that his father killed my grandfathers, I wish those grandfathers were here today. I wish, so they could see what I've done to his head. The way that I play with what I play. Yes? When you say that, is there any tawbah there? Any at all? I ask you, a person, number two, who pokes the lips of the grandson of Rasulullah. When a person pokes the lips of the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, what tawbah is that? What regret is that? You say, may Allah curse Ibn Marjana? May Allah curse Ibn Marjana for what? Because you weren't the ones who directly killed Imam al-Hussein. You're poking the lips of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. I love how even the historians try and turn the issue onto Ibn Ziyad, not Imam al-Hussein. What do I mean? Online, there's a website, even on Google, if you type Yazid killing Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, and you type Islam QA. Islam QA is a famous website which answers all sorts of questions in the world, a predominantly Salafi website. On that website, every argument against Yazid, they've written weak, Shia, Rafidi, weak. Okay? But they say, but we don't like him. Baba, you've given a better defense than you give of your mom and dad. Who, as they used to say, is it love of Muawiyah or hate of Ali? I don't think anyone loves Muawiyah. It's just that I hate Abu Turab. True? Sometimes when you read through the lines of history, it's not hate, it's not love of Muawiyah. Some of these historians, I don't think they could care less about Muawiyah. But the hate of Ali. Likewise, wallah, sometimes I think it's not love of Yazid, it's hate of Hussein. Really? Because when you look at some of the points that I mentioned, for example, the second point about poking the lips, Abu Barz al-Aslami. Abu Barz al-Aslami was a companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. He is the one who saw the poking of the lips. In Bukhari, mentions that Ibn Ziyad was the one poking the lips. Other texts mention Yazid poking the lips. And that Abu Barz al-Aslami, Tabari says that Abu Barz al-Aslami attacked Yazid. How dare you poke the lips? I seen these lips kissed by Rasulullah. Yeah? What do they say on this website? The ones on Yazid, no authenticity. Just on Ibn Ziyad. Why? Why? It's not the love of Yazid. The problem if Yazid's domino falls, the next one falls. And if the next one falls, the one who appointed him, the biggest pillar, falls. True? So those who know, know. I don't know. You know or you don't know? Those who know, know. I can't go any further because then it become YouTube clip. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. If you admit that Yazid, the person will say to you, I don't like Yazid, but wallah, if you attack him, I'll say everything you attack him is da'if. Okay, but you don't like him. No, I don't like him. But if a Shia doesn't like him, I like him. And I'm going to prove this to you in a second. So when it comes to Yazid poking the lips, it's there. Tabari says. But when Tabari says this, now it's weak. Tabari says other things, good. Tabari praises Ali, he's just a historian. Tabari praises, anyway. So, the poking of the lips and the teeth, before I see the red mist descend upon me, it's better that I move on to other points. The poking on the lips of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, that number 2 doesn't show regret at all. Yes? So firstly, I want my ancestors from Badr back, no regret. Poking the lips, no regret. Even worse than that, his last lines in the poem, لعبت هاشم بالملك. Bani Hashim played with a kingdom. That means he doesn't believe in nubuwah at all. لعبت هاشم بالملك فلا خبر جاء ولا وحي. No news came and there was no wahi. If you don't believe in wahi, are you Muslim? That's why I've always believed that Yazid bin Muawiyah was a Christian at most. Christian. His mom is Christian, Maysun al-Kilabiyya. So I believe that a Christian, Syrian, Yazid at most is Christian. He is not Muslim at all. His dad married a Christian. And that's why sometimes people ask, can we marry from other religions, Ahl al-Kitab? Some ulama say yes. Some may not allow. But even those ulama say, yes, you have to think about the children. Which direction are they going to head? You believe in one, he believes in three. Really, as in at the end, if I'm going to say that God is one, and then God is in the flesh, and then God's on a cross, and then God's talking to God, but one God's in heaven, the other's on earth, even the child will say, atheism sounds all right now. So we have to make sure. You see, Muawiyah married a Christian lady, Maysoon. Yazid in his childhood used to spend a lot of time with his mom's tribe, and it has the effect at the end. لَعِبَتْ هَاشِمْ بِالْمُلْكِ. If a Christian does not believe that Rasulullah was a prophet, and a Christian doesn't believe that Gabriel descended on the prophet, he might even say prophet is the Antichrist in certain times. And so Yazid, on the third level, no Tawbah. Why? Because he doesn't even believe in the religion of Tawbah. The religion of Tawbah, Yazid does not believe in it. Therefore, that's on the third level. On the fourth level, Sayyida Zainab destroys, alayha salam, the argument that Yazid was regretful. In which way? The first way, in her khutbah, when Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam says, how ironic it is that the members of the party of Allah are killed by the members of the party of Shaitan. If you're called the party of Shaitan, there's little tawbah coming your way. Yes? Hizb al-Shaitan versus the Hizb of Allah. There's a difference between the two. Hizb of Allah are those on the path of Muhammad and Al Muhammad salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhim. Allahumma sallam. Hizb al-Shaitan are those people who Shaitan has overtaken. Every act of theirs is a transgression against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, Sayyida Zainab, but Sayyida Zainab proves it in another way. One of the most intense dialogues that happens in Sham highlights the takabbur of this fasiq, of this kafir la'natullah alayh. This dialogue that happens between who? Between Sayyida Zainab and Yazid. There was, as the Maqtal says word for word, a ruddy looking Syrian who was sitting next to Yazid and who saw the daughter of Imam al-Hussein, the young one, and said to Yazid, I want her for me. Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam saw this Syrian sitting next to Yazid. Sayyida Zainab looked at them. She said, you liars, you are delusional. Neither of you has the authority to decide where she goes. Yazid said to her, by Allah, you are the liar. Now, number one, there's no tawbah there, calling the granddaughter of Rasulullah the liar. By Allah, you are the liar. I am the one. God has given me authority to decide whether she comes here or she doesn't. Sayyida Zainab says, God has never given you any authority, but if you leave this religion, you may find some authority waiting for you. Get out of Islam, someone might give you authority. In Islam, God has never given you authority. He said to her, how dare you talk like that to me? Rather, it is your father and your brother who have left the religion. Imagine, where is the tawbah there? To which she replies, listen to this reply of Aqilat al-Talibiyin. Listen to this reply. This is a reply of all replies. She says, if your father or your grandfather or you have even become Muslims at all, it was because of my grandfather and my father and my brother. There's a huge line. If your father or your grandfather or you have even become Muslims, which means she has a shak on whether he is a Muslim or his father is a Muslim or his grandfather is a Muslim. Might be non-Shia listening to this saying, how could you have shak in Amir Muawiyah or Khalil al-Mu'mineen being a believer? Habibi, you can, if you want, you can believe in him. But you cannot impose your history on me. You have yours. At the end of the day, I believe Abu Talib is a Muslim. You may believe he's a kafir. That's up to you. But you cannot impose on me who I believe is a Muslim and a kafir. At the end of the day, when the granddaughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says to Yazid, if your father or your grandfather or you have even become Muslims, then it was only because of my father and my grandfather and my brother. Why does she say this? Firstly, her grandfather is the one who released them on the day of Mecca. All of these. They are tulaqa. Talaq is called talaq because one is released from a contract they are in. Tulaqa are those who were released on the day of Mecca when they should have been beheaded. But our Prophet is a man of mercy. Otherwise, all these people should have been beheaded on that day. That's on the one level. She says, because of my father. If they were Muslims, it was because of my father. Wallah, if it wasn't her father's sword, Islam would never have survived. And if it wasn't for her father's bravery and her father's valor, wallah, Islam would not have reached where it reached. One runs away, as the poet says. One runs away in Uhud, and another runs away in Hunayn. And Abu Turab remains firm in the middle of all of them. Imagine, in Uhud, one... Allah. So what do I have here? I have that, Sayyidah Zainab, she says to him, if you're even, it is because of my grandfather, and because of my father, and because. He said to her, by Allah, you are a liar with what you say to me. She said, all you have against me is a barrage of insults and nothing else. So there, Sayyidah Zainab proves there's no tawbah. In this back and forth, likewise with Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, the very fact that when he said to Ali ibn Hussein, how did you find how we dealt with your father? That's no tawbah. No tawbah there. If you say, forgive me for what I did to your father, I was wrong with what I did to your father, how did you find? And then Imam Zain al-Abidin said, Allah already knew of these events and how they would transpire. Ahlul Bayt have always this calm method that when they answer with the broader perspective. God already knew what would happen. And then Yazid consults those around him. What do you think we should do to him? And listen to what one of them says to him. What do we do with a puppy that is the son of a rabid dog? He calls Imam Zain al-Abidin a puppy son of a dog with rabies. Now what is the tawbah there? Which tawbah? Where he is insulting Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And insulting Imam Zain al-Abidin, as you all know, is respected by all schools in Islam. And he shows the insults towards them as well. Further than that, how else do we prove that there was no tawbah? What else can we show? Ziyarat Ashura. And Ziyarat Ashura was written by who? Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam was at Karbala, was at Kufa, and was in Sham. So he would know whether someone has done tawbah or not. Imam al-Baqir, when he comes to the line, Allahumma inna hadha yawmun tabarakat bihi Banu Umayyah. This is a day in which Bani Umayyah celebrated. And who of them in particular? هذا يوم تبركت به بني أمية وابن آكلة الأكباد اللعين ابن. Notice what Imam al-Baqir does. Number one, this is a day that was celebrated by Bani Umayyah, not Ibn Ziyad, not Umar bin Sa'ad, not Shimr. Bani Umayyah, meaning all the responsibility is on Yazid. The son of who? The son of the cannibal. That's not Ibn Marjan, Ibn Akilat al-Akbad. Number three, Imam al-Baqir doesn't stop there. He says, Al-La'in ibn al-La'in. The cursed, son of cursed. Imagine. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, why are you showing hate, Imam? We Shia, people of rahmah, we love, mercy. Wallah, someone once came to me, said to me, does Allah love all his creation? You know, when it gets into this murky world of mysticism and arfani, this and that, and I don't know where it goes into. Sometimes even within our own Shias. Anyway, so said to me, does Allah love all his creation? I said, yes. All his creation? I said, yes, Allah loves all his creation. So that means Allah loves Yazid. You know, you play with these games of wordings and so on. Yes, but in the Quran, Allah also says, Inna Allah la yuhibbu. Allah does not like as well those who mock the message of Allah. Not don't believe in the message. Not believing in the message is okay. You have free will. But to mock the message means you're out of the realm of love. Imam al-Baqir, when he does la'na, people say, why are you doing la'na on Yazid? And I've said this before, and I'll continue to say it wherever we are. That when a person tells you don't do la'na, yes, la'na has a time and place in every case. There has to be wisdom with what we do, where we do it. But with Yazid, when someone says, and the poet replies, they tell me, do not do la'na on Yazid, for Allah may forgive him. Therefore I do double the la'na. For if Allah is willing to forgive Yazid for killing Imam al-Hussein, He'll forgive my la'na on him as well. Yes? When Imam al-Baqir says, al-la'in ibn al-la'in, Imam is saying la'na on him. And those who also were involved in what? In the appointment of such a person into the realm and where he got to. Therefore, ziyarah. Another point about tawbah. Tawbah, you regret what you've done, true. And that you never do it again. Historians sitting in this crowd and mashallah online, all of you I'm sure have read about Waqi'at al-Harra. Waqi'at al-Harra, which occurred within the couple of years after Karbala, when Yazid ordered his general, Muslim bin Aqaba, it should be called Musrif bin Aqaba, to go to Medina and rape the woman of Medina and kill whoever's there. And I look on YouTube, wallah, it's so interesting. Sometimes when you do research for these majalis, you're trying to look for the one who's like the complete opposite to you, in your opinion. I saw one, he said, yes, they went in, and you know, they obviously dragged people out their houses and so on, and that was it. That was it, mashallah. That's what you do as the Khalifa of Muslims and the general. They raped the woman. All these ladies were pregnant from men they didn't know. Why? Because there was an uprising against Yazid in Medina by Abdullah bin Hanbala. Abdullah bin Hanbala, by the way, is the son of a Sahabi. When a son of a Sahabi rises against the Khalifa, what does that tell you about that Khalifa? 80 Sahaba, the Quran reciters, people in their thousands were killed in Medina. Dogs were urinating all over Medina. Women were raped. And then after that, they went to the Kaaba and they attacked the Kaaba. If you had tawbah with what happened in Karbala, then explain to me what happened in Waqi'at al-Harra. Waqi'at al-Harra, after Karbala, within a couple of years, just before Yazid died, they went, they pillaged Mecca and Medina. If you don't have respect for Sayyida Zainab, Imam Zainab, Imam al-Hussein, you don't have respect for Mecca and Medina, will you tell me? Khadim al-Haramain and the Haramain and Masjid al-Nabawi and Masjid al-Haram, and this person went and pillaged. Notice, therefore, that what's interesting is that Ahmad bin Hanbal's son Salih asks him, he says, Dad, there are those who love Yazid. Listen to this line. This is interesting. You all know Ahmad bin Hanbal, Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali. Ahmad's son Salih says to him, Dad, there are people who love Yazid. What's your opinion? And he said to him, our opinion is that how could anyone love Yazid who believes in Allah and believes in the Day of Judgment? So then he said to him, then Dad, why don't you curse him? And the dad gives an interesting reply. When have you known me to curse anyone? Why not? Why, Imam Ahmed? Why don't you curse? What's the issue? Should be open in your cursing of him. The man who defiled the religion, the man who defiled the Quran. So when they give the answer, what do they say? Yazid, most of the worst that he done was just some drinking. That's it, drinking, nothing more. Drinking, and the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa is butchered, and his head is paraded. Ahmad bin Hanbal says, I will not curse anyone. Why you won't curse anyone? Wallah, it's not love of Yazid. It's not the love of Yazid. It's the problem of the dominoes falling. Because if the door of cursing is open against those who hurt Allah and His Prophet, then other doors begun to be open. Why? Everyone, please listen to this point before I conclude. Yazid, what's his crime? Ultimately, what's his crime? Is that he killed one of the signs of Allah on earth. True? Yes? He killed one of the signs of Allah. No recording, please. I beg of you. These are He killed one of the signs of Allah on earth. So we do la'na on him. He killed also one of the family of Rasulullah sallallahu. Yes. He ordered for burning. Yes. All of these, therefore, why would Ahmad bin Hanbal not curse him? Because if the same criteria is applied to others, then the door of la'na has to open before Karbala. Because there are some who will say to you that Yazid, I'll do la'na, but others, look, the trouble began with Bani Umayyah. But at the end of the day, if your criteria for why you do la'na on Yazid is that he threatened the children of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi and was ready to burn where they stayed and was ready to have henchmen go and attack them, then if that criteria is taken and is applied somewhere else, then la'na becomes simple for others. Is that true or no? Because sometimes if our youth ask us that we shouldn't, why would you then hate Yazid and then have issues with others? And the hatred of Yazid is because he done this to a family member of the Prophet, and he hurt them and he defiled their honor and their sanctity. The same would apply to others. But we follow the sunnah of our imams at the end. And the sunnah of the imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam is that while they would do la'na, that la'na sometimes names are mentioned, sometimes no. Out of recognition that there may be others, for example, out there who may have a reverence for people who fit that criteria. For us, finally, therefore, what was the biggest sign of no regret for Yazid? Is his treatment of the daughters of Rasulullah. While in Sham, these daughters were young and some were older. Yes. And the worst of the treatment, which showed he had no regret, was that even the tears of a young daughter had no effect on him whatsoever. If you were to hear a child crying, irrespective of your history, irrespective of your position, even now if I walk in the streets in Karbala and I see a child crying, it breaks your heart, wallah. Why? Because on the one hand, you cannot bear to see a baby cry or a child cry. On the other hand, you wonder that there was a time one day, 1,400 years ago, that maybe, where she is crying, a daughter of Hussein cried. You know, even myself personally, I tell you something. Sometimes when I walk in Karbala, even, wallah, when I see ladies all covered and abaya and everything, and you can't see their face as such. Sometimes I think to myself, you know what, there was a night where these ladies were like this walking, but wondering what's happened in Karbala. So the tears of a young girl will break your heart. The sign that this man had zero tawbah in him was that even the tears and the cries of anguish from a girl so young, when it woke him up, he was more interested in shutting her up. All of you know where I'm heading. Take your hearts on a night like this to Sham. Those of you who've been, you've seen that beautiful small darih, haven't you? And those of you who haven't been, may Allah bless you that you go and visit the darih in Sham. You go there in that small darih that exists, and you remember a night like this, and you remember a daughter of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. And that daughter from Karbala to Kufa, from Kufa to Sham, what did she see? Baba, what did she see? She saw horses' hooves. She saw burning tents. She saw whips on her back. She saw so many things. Wallah, may Allah never show a child any of these things. A criminal, however much he has done, if he sees another one molesting children, even for him, he sees that as the worst act. True? A criminal, if he sees someone in their prison who has molested a child, even the criminal will say, how could you do that to a child? These people, what did they do to those children? Whip them and hit them and kick them. And yet still those children would wake up every morning, and each one of them would look in the eyes of their auntie Zainab and say, where's my father? show me my father. I want to see my father. And in the ruins of Sham, subhanallah, in those ruins, one night one of them woke up and said, I want to see my father, Abu Abdullah. I tell her, we all of us here on ziyarah, we're not even the children of Abu Abdullah, yet we yearn to see him. How about you who has been cuddled by him? How about you who has been hugged by him? How about you who have smelt his fragrance? I can understand that you miss him. I haven't even smelt him. And I yearn for him. She woke up, she said to her auntie Zainab, I want to see my father, Abu Abdullah. Her auntie, may Allah bless her, every day would say to her, your father's on a journey. And he'll come back, and your father's on a journey, your father's on a journey, you'll meet him, your father's on a journey. But this time she noticed her crying more than ever before. And she noticed her scream was the loudest scream. Yazid, when he woke up, la'natullah alayh, when he woke up, he said, what was that scream? They said to him, Hussein's daughter wants to see her father. He said, so let her see her father. They placed the head of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam in a box. They took the box into the room where they were staying. She looked, she said to her auntie, auntie, I'm not hungry. Why do they bring me food? When she lifted the cover of the box, she saw the holy head of Abu Abdullah in front of her. What does the daughter do except say, Father, 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 who drenched your beard with all that blood? Father, 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 who severed your head from your neck? Father, 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 who is there for us orphans after you? All of a sudden, Imam Zain al-Abidin called out, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. How many times did Zainab have to hear Inna lillahi? What sabr did Zainab have to hear Inna lillah? But how about the mothers, Rabab and Ramla and others? Another of the children of Al-Muhammad died in front of them. They gave the body to a nurse. They said, go and do ghusl for her, please. The nurse took the body, she went to go and perform the ghusl, but she came back quickly. There's no way a ghusl could be performed that quick. The nurse said, I apologize, I couldn't do the ghusl. They said to her, why? She said to them, was the young girl ill when she died? They said to her, no, she was not, she was feeling well. She asked, and what are all those bruises on her body? What are the blue marks on her body? Allah, may your daughters never see this. Those of you who have daughters here, can you imagine bruises all over the body of your daughter? To which the Imam said, those aren't blue marks, those are the bruises from Shimr bin al-Jawshan's way. I'll leave you with this line. When they reach Karbala on nights like this, you can imagine all of them running to their children. Qasim's mom to her child, Rabab to her child. Zainab alayhi salam, to her credit, Zainab, when she came towards her Imam, she came by his body. She had a message to give him. What was it? You told me to look after all of them as an amana. All of them I brought back with me, except her I left to Sham.